It's chaos. It's a different type of Sunday scary. It's your newest obsession. It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to your newest mini episode of Dirty Driving. It's a bye week, or it was a bye weekend last weekend. So, we are going to take a moment and talk about something that has been the topic of discussion these past few weeks, and that is the 2026 engine regulations. So, the things that have been announced in the past couple of weeks are the partnerships that these teams are making with engine manufacturers to build their 2026 engines that will fit the new regulations, which we're going to talk about in a second. The partnerships that have already been announced are Red Bull pairing with Ford, Alfa Romeo or Sauber, the true team, will be partnering with Audi, and Aston Martin will be partnering with Honda. One of these that I want to touch on, I've already touched on it in a previous episode, but I just want to highlight the crazy part about these partnerships is that Honda themselves said a couple years ago, we're done. We don't want to be in the F1 game anymore. We're pulling out. And that's when Red Bull started their own powertrain development program. However, Honda saw that the engines were doing well. They got a couple championships. And so they wanted to come back into the field, starting their 7th stint in Formula One. Honda actually approached Red Bull and asked if they could come back. But since Red Bull has already devoted a lot of their time, resources to their powertrains and also announced Ford, Red Bull was like, nope, none of that. Sorry, too late. Aston Martin, on the other hand, said, yep, come help us, come be our engine supplier. And that's what we're going to see in 2026. So while Honda has had experience in Formula One, they and all of these new engine manufacturers and all of the current engine manufacturers are going to be facing new regulations starting in 2026. So, what perfect timing to review the changes that are actually changing place. And these changes are in line with F1's goal to become carbon neutral by 2030 by placing a greater emphasis on both electric power and the use of sustainable fuels. The F1 Chief Technical Officer, Pat Symonds, also confirmed that one of the other top goals of this regulation change is to level the playing field for newcomers, new teams that want to join in the sport that would honestly just be way too behind in engine development to be able to keep up with anyone else on the grid. Let's talk about the key changes that are taking place for the engines come 2026. The new engines will be fully run on synthetic sustainable fuels, which means no new fossil carbon will be burned. In addition, the new engines will provide 3 times the electrical power with the inclusion of a more powerful electrical component, the MGU-K. This will increase the amount of electrical power in total. There will be more braking energy collected, which was previously wasted, to add to the 350 kilowatts of energy compared to the current 120 kilowatts of energy. With the higher proportion of electrical power, the car will use less fuel. The car will also be safer with the MGU-K to be enclosed within the chassis, meaning that all the high voltage equipment will be contained within the safety cell, in total making the car a much safer place to be. And finally, these changes should allow for lower costs with an engine cost cap, banning of expensive materials and systems like the MGU-H, which we're completely getting rid of, plus the use of a lot more standardized components. Engineers will still be able to innovate and add to the engine, creating the differences that may make them the next champion. Changing the engine to increase electrical performance could provide more of a challenge for teams and drivers with strategy of when to use the increased electrical potential. While we won't hear these engines scream, that's a big sad point, we will potentially see smaller cars. Adrian Newey, Red Bull's chief technical officer and the godfather of aerodynamics, just mentioned a warning that the cars will be a lot slower once the regulations come into play. One other key item that we will have to keep a pulse on is the weight of the future cars. Both the FIA president and the F1 CEO recently made the urge for a lighter car to come in 2026. These regulation changes, just like last year's, could create a very different grid with some additional teams joining the grid. At the end of the day, us fans could be in for a very different Formula One. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Dirty Driving. Until next time, stay dirty.